Hiya, I'm Paula from Chic Emporium, and today we've got a little project on that I thought would be fun, and it's going to involve some stenciling, which I know some of you have some difficulties with, so I thought I'd go through that in more detail, more slow motion. But in the first instance, as you can see, I've picked this up and it's got lots of stains and ring marks on it, so I'm going to anticipate that would bleed, so I'm going to stain block it with finishing coat, a couple of coats, and dry it off before I start painting. The colours I've chosen today are Creme de la Creme and Grey Pebble, and today I'm going to use square brushes because I'm going to separate and do some stripes, and so because I want the square edge not to go over onto the next one, I'm going to use these kind of brushes today. So once I've stain blocked and got my coats of paint on and we're at the stage of some stenciling and distressing, I'll come back to you and show you what we're doing. Okay, thank you. Right, so I just wanted to show you where I was at. I've done all of the grey, and as you can see, I haven't masked off. I've literally just gone for it with the brush, and there's some overlapping and there's some splodges in the corner, but I've been really careful to make sure I've got all of the what should be grey. And the trick with this is to make sure that you completely dry it before you get to the next colour. If you try to put the cream or whatever colour you've chosen on while it's still wet, you're going to get yourself into a right mess. So I think it's quite important to put the darker of the two colours that you've chosen as the predominant colour. It would look completely different if it was the other way round. So I've only got sort of little areas of the cream. I've also got to figure out a way of doing these holes. I presume at some point there were some little drawers, and whoever's removed them has done it as a test for me to see how I'm going to get a paintbrush into that tiny little hole. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do with that. But I'll come back when I've done the cream, and then we'll be moving on to the next stage. Alright. Right, so as you can see, I've done all the cream. I managed to do it inside using a really tiny brush. I'm giving it a real jiggle and wiggle, so it looks pretty good. I decided that doing the stripes continued was just a mission impossible, so I've done it all cream. If you have a look here at this top half, I've left it to show you. You can still see a lot of the gap, the wood through it. When I've done these in the past, I've painstakingly gone down it with a small brush and all the rest of it, but it's actually not necessary. This is good enough because once you get the sandpaper on it and just gently rub, it ends up looking like this, the bottom half, which is a lot better. So I'll just show you how to do it if you watch, because it really is very little. This sandpaper is 120. I'm not pressing very hard, and I'm not just pressing everywhere. I'm just a little bit, and then suddenly the gap in between really doesn't look like a problem anymore. Okay, so I'm going to continue just taking off the little edges on the sides, just a little bit of distressing. I don't want heavy distressing on this, and then I'll come back to you because the next stage is the stenciling, which I really want to show you in more detail. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. Right, I've finished all the distressing, and you'll see it's really very minimal. It was more about blending the lines in between the stripes, but it's come out really effective. I really like it. So I've chosen two stencils. These are French stencils. I bought them on eBay. They're not very expensive, £3 or £4 each. You can order them. And I'm going to use a stencil brush. And one trick to help with stenciling and make it easier is when the brush, no matter how good quality the stencil brush is, once you've used it a lot, it starts to spread out. This is still pretty good, but they gradually start getting wider and wider and wider, which is what you don't want when you're stenciling. So a trick to get around that is to use a little bit of masking tape and tape it up nice and tight, so you're keeping the end nice and tight and flat. So that's what you want. So the best thing you can do when you're stenciling is to have the item that you're stenciling laying down, so that you are literally going up and down, so you've got no room for it to bleed and run. Consistency is a big thing. The consistency of French Chic chalk paint is absolutely perfect for stenciling. You don't need to do anything to it. Don't water it down. Don't do anything. You can also use acrylic paint, and acrylic paint doesn't need watering down either. Do not add water because you want it thick. You don't want it runny. If it's runny, it's going to run underneath the holes in the stencil. So I have very simply masked into place, just so as I don't get any movement, my stencil. And less is more. So I'm going to put the tiniest bit on my brush. I'm going to use my lid to dry it off. So I've got less. I'm using Panther. And then I'm just going to go up and down. And if the first stipple is a little bit wet because I didn't wipe off enough, I can always go back to it, pick it back up and move on. It's much better with stenciling to do 2 coats rather than one thick one. Because the thick one is, again, runs the risk of bleeding underneath, and you don't want that. So as you can see, that one dab of very little on the brush has actually gone quite a long way. So I'm now at the point where I'll come back to my lid because it's less and carry on. So I'll do the whole stencil once, which will give it a chance to dry, and then I'll come back, go back over it a second time to make sure it's solid. And then at the end, the next thing you have to remember to do with stencils is when you've finished, remove the stencil straight away, unpeel it. So I'm just going to carry on now, completing this stencil. Right, so I finished both stencils, and all I've done is very, very gently sand down just to give it a bit of an age look. Despite all that preparation, there was a tiny smudge there. So all I've done is slightly sand it down, and I think it just gives it the age look. It looks fine. The last thing to do is to wax the whole piece to protect it. Just one little tip, and this is from something that happened to me a long time ago, was make sure you use furniture French ink wax to go over your stencils, not any other kind of like dry wax or something like that. It doesn't work. It will smudge your stenciling all over the place, particularly if you've used acrylic paint, not French ink paint for your stenciling. It will smudge it everywhere. I've had a complete disaster with it. So furniture wax is the way to go. It will protect it. It will be absolutely fine. So just literally using clear wax over the whole piece. And as you can see, it's not smudging it at all. It's completely safe. Obviously I had to make sure that it was dry before we started, but it goes without saying. Okay, I should pop back when it's finished. Right, so it's all finished. I think you'll agree it looks fab. I really like the effect, and it's really easy to do. I'm sure you too can do it at home. I hope you learned something. I hope you have a go. Hope you try some colour combinations and some stripes. Thank you for watching and supporting me. Please subscribe to my page, that way you won't miss any future videos to come. And like me on Facebook. It's www.facebook.com/The Emporium Venture, which will take you straight to Chic Emporium. Thank you very much.